When I was in the 3rd grade, I thought that I was gay because I could draw, my uncle was, and I kept my room straight. I told my mom, with tears rushing down my face. Malcolm Moore's song, Same Love, starts out. These 3 lines alone demonstrate that children are uneducated about what homosexuality is, how stereotypes cause children to... How did homosexuality come to be? It is often said that homosexuality is a choice, and because of this, homosexuals should not be given the same rights as everyone else. Although not all Christian scholars agree with some of the things they read, they do believe that humanity rebelled and God returned with 6 negative consequences taking form in polygamy, divorce, adultery, homosexuality, sterility, and gender role confusion. While Christian scholars believe that homosexuality is punishment, according to Simon LeVay, who discovered the INAH3, part of the hypothalamus that helps regulate sexual behavior, tended to be smaller in gay men than in straight men. His theory was proven correct according to a study done in 1959 where scientists flashed a flashlight in the eyes of a pregnant mouse. What the study means is that when a mother is subjected to serious stressors during the pregnancy, androstenedione releases itself into the shared bloodstream and causes more testosterone in a male person. Although it is possible that the same chemical affects females and causes women to be lesbian, it is unknown since androstenedione is similar to testosterone and women do not produce testosterone. Whereas Christian scholars provide ample evidence that homosexuality is a punishment for God, LeVay, Phoenix, Goy, Gorel, and Young's research on the INAH3 and homosexuality convinces me that homosexuality is completely natural and not a punishment. Religious peoples are the main reason that so many people struggle with accepting homosexuality, and yet we're being told to accept everybody. The golden rule that everybody is raised knowing is to treat others the way you wish to be treated. Homosexuals want to be treated the same way you want to be treated. A Christian organization called the FRC wrote and published a pamphlet against gay-straight alliances in schools. They agree that while LGBT students should be educated, they do not have the right to force their lifestyle on others in a school, and allowing a gay-straight alliance would cause an outroar. According to the Old Testament, homosexuality is wrong because God created couples so that they could produce offspring. Unfortunately, homosexual couples cannot produce offspring. Now, in this day, I think that the Old Testament is incorrect because the population has jumped so much that it is no longer important for couples to reproduce. The Bible calls a family the union of one man and one woman who ends up having children. While the Old Testament says that homosexuality is wrong, it also says that God hates divorce, but since humanity was rebelling, he created divorce. Now, many people get a divorce on a daily basis and no one yells or protests then. Back to the family bit. It is considered a reason that so many people have such an issue with homosexuality is because homosexuals cannot reproduce. Now, hear me out. Adoption. There are hundreds of thousands of children who are orphans and need a safe place to call a home. So why then are so many gay couples turned away from adopting the child that they want and deserve? If God created a couple, then he wanted that couple to be together. If God created a man to like a man, it was because he wanted it to be so. If God is the reason that every couple is together, then why do so many couples end up getting divorced? Food for thought as we continue down this road. The reason many people believe that homosexuality is wrong is because man and woman were meant for each other, while man and man were not. Now here's another thought for you. Religious people condone homosexuality, yet they used to not condone polygamy, because it was acceptable to have multiple husbands or wives as a way of protection. It is also said that it was the first consequence of man rebelling against God. You would think that marriage is the same for all couples, something to strive for with your one true love. Yet marriage is still denied to homosexual couples around the world. Marriage is something most people yearn for and request that once they have it, their family and friends hold them to it. It's the ability to show that you really love the person you're with in one of the easiest ways possible. Homosexuals want to be able to marry for the same reason as anyone else does. They want to prove their lifetime commitment to each other and their family and friends, and even themselves. Look at it this way. If you were denied access to marry the person you loved, would you be okay with that? Everyone has the right to marry whomever they want to, and that right should not be taken away from them. So why then is there still an argument against marriage? While they rarely admit as much, educators often take for granted the fact that education should be the same for every student everywhere, no matter their gender, sexual orientation, religion, or beliefs. A school district in Tennessee has been blocking websites such as Gleason, GSA Network, and the HCR that help educate young students on LGBTQ rights. While the school districts were blocking those websites, they were allowing websites that urged reparative therapy, which can harm some students so much that they commit suicide. A great recent example of this is a few months back when Leila Alcorn was forced to go to a reparative therapy camp and returned only to commit suicide because her parents wouldn't accept that she wanted to be female and not a male as she was born. The ACLU stepped into the school district when the student found that the websites such as GLSEN and the HCR were blocked, and that the student couldn't look for scholarships at school. The ACLU demanded that the Tennessee school districts that used their filtering software would have a massive lawsuit on their hands if they did not go into the internet system and remove the filter. Healthcare is important to everyone, so no matter what race, gender, or their religion. Healthcare is the basis of any human life, so why does there seem to be conflict even in something as simple as healthcare? Well, perhaps it's not a real serious fight, but there is still a fight there. While civil unions are similar to marriage, there is one major difference when it comes to healthcare. Many homosexual relationships struggle with when one part is in the hospital. Oftentimes, the gays and lesbian couples are turned away from seeing their loved ones when their loved one is in their greatest time of need. Many homosexuals deal with the serious insults and suffering from psychotic disorders and substance abuse, and more often than not, end up committing suicide. Due to people believing that homosexuality is a choice, many homosexual youth end up committing suicide because they don't receive the help and support they need in pushing them to take extreme actions. So what is our country doing to help handle all of these struggles? Little to nothing, unfortunately, meaning that the country is starting to have laws formed that are quite similar to Jim Crow laws after the Civil War ended. Jim Crow laws were the laws that banned blacks and whites from being in the same place. The reason that they seem similar to the Jim Crow laws is the way they're worded. In the past few years, both Kansas and Arizona had bills that started to look like they could easily have been morphed into discrimination bills. In Colorado, the bills were House Bills 1161 and 1171. Thankfully, this bill was both vetoed in Kansas and Arizona. If the law passed, it was recommended that the business owners posted a sign so that gays and lesbians would not enter their service. Although it is pointed out that Jesus would often serve people that he didn't agree with, and that became a huge part of Christianity. If Jesus died for the world that he didn't agree with, then a business owner should do business with a couple that they don't agree with. Since it was always taught that Jesus thought of getting divorced then remarried was adultery, then one should not be able to get a divorce if homosexuals may not marry. The only reason it would seem that Arizona's law did not pass was because the governor was pressured into vetoing the bill. Even now, it seems risky that Arizona would consider allowing this law because years ago they refused to celebrate Martin Luther King Day and lost the Super Bowl being played in their state. And if they passed this bill, they would lose another Super Bowl. Lawmakers in Kansas passed a bill saying that Christian employers had the right to deny homosexual couples service. They wished to achieve segregation similar to that of the 1964 before the Civil Rights Act passed. Arizona finds themselves opening the doors for discrimination of any person. Similar bills are currently going through the voting process here in Colorado on whether or not to pass the bills that allow for discrimination. Homosexuality affects 8 to 15% of all males and slightly less females. Homosexuals live all around the world in places where it is illegal and prosecutable to be gay. In 5 countries, the death penalty is still legal, and in 70 countries, imprison their citizens due to their sexual orientation. Today, it is only approximately 10% of the entire world's population that lives in a country where LGBT rights are legal. Russia's president has passed anti-gay laws that would allow the country to arrest foreign travelers that are believed to be gay or are supporters of the gays. The president of Uganda signed a law that causes a 14-year jail sentence for any homosexual acts and a life sentence for those found guilty of aggravated homosexuality, though this is no longer included the death penalty as an earlier version of this bill did. Around the world, teens are being tortured out of the closet and no one is stopping. One final piece to make sure that you think about is the following. We have a president who supports gay marriage, and the current pope says that if one is gay and one is Christian, then he supports them. Our society judges homosexuals harsher than they judge other people in our society. Our society can only work if we aren't fighting one another on a daily basis over something as simple as who a person is. Society should not be fighting amongst itself like during the Civil War. Instead, society should celebrate everybody's differences.